These doctors came in and testified. Phil Resnick, the man is something out of a scary movie. He has the world record of investigating, examining, and treating people in psychosis that kill their children, filicide. He has a world-renowned record for checking fakers to see if a person is malingering. Their doctor agreed that his article on Voices is a leading article with research in the world. Their doctor agreed that he, Bill Resnick, is an expert on malingering. You heard him testify by Zoom because he had surgery. But he showed up by Zoom and testified that, again, 4 months after this incident, he met with Lindsay, he evaluated Lindsay, compared, looked at all the records, just like all the rest of them. Everyone says they look at all the records, the police reports, grand jury minutes, everything else. He indicates clearly, in his opinion, that she was in a state of psychosis at the time of this death, times 3. Has any of the government doctors rebutted that? One of them, Halbrand, said it's possible either way. That's not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. The other one, Mac, you can accept his testimony if you wish, but I suggest that you probably won't. And then you're left with the doctor yesterday, who didn't even know. He didn't even know what killing during the course of the psychosis was, and when I was questioning him about it, he agreed, and I said, don't just agree with me. You're just agreeing with me because I said that? And he basically said, yeah. What kind of expert testimony is this? It's a mess. But the government uses them to try to rebut a man like Phil Resnick, who tells you that she was suffering from a horrific mental disease and defect at the time of the killing of her beautiful children. Why? The how? And the fact that under the law, as His Honor has given you, she's not criminally responsible. And the burden is on them, right here. Prove to you that at the time of the killing, as Dr. Resnick says, that she was suffering from a disease or defect. As Dr. Zeizel said, that she was suffering from a disease or defect. As Dr. Condie said, she was suffering from a disease or defect, and Condie took you down the road of all of these medications as a psychopharmacologist, as a doctor that specializes in prescription medications. And you got the evidence, so you're able to look at that and determine, see what the side effects are, what she was complaining of, and look at her records. I mean, they have really turned her inside out. I mean, they've got every single text, every single email, every single picture, everything that she did in college. Oh, that's another thing. She lied, according to the guy yesterday that testified. She lied to Pat about being on Prozac. They were dating for 3 months. She's living in Boston. She meets this kid. She thinks that she might like him, and they're dating. Oh, excuse me, before you go out with me, let me tell you that about a year ago when I was studying for my exams, because I'm nervous about talking in public, I got on Prozac. Seriously? That's what the government is arguing in this case. You're going to have this journal, which talks about her being, this is how controlling she was, manipulation. In the opening statement, you may recall that the district attorney said that she was a hard, charging, manipulating woman that was controlling, and everything in their life was controlled, and she ran it to the water, to the carrots, to the beets. You look in this book, and as you might recall, Ms. Rossi testified when asked, did you feel that she was being controlling of you? Because she says, for example, Monday, 10:24, Callan, put down for a nap. Hopefully we'll nap for 2 hours. If he wakes shortly, let him resettle himself. Bottle when he wakes up. Then it goes on and on. Make salad, romaine lettuce. He likes peppers, broccoli. Cut the sweet potatoes in chunks. Thank you, with the heart. another good score. You look at her journals that she took, you'll see, as you go along, in the dates that she's recording in these journals, she's talking about the drugs that she was prescribed. And look at the first page. Look at how detailed. Dates, how she felt, 10 milligrams Prozac, and it goes on like that, goes on through November into December. December 9th, 10th, 11th. Horrible intrusive thoughts. Horrible thoughts in the AM. Horrible thoughts. Horrible thoughts. No motivation. And then finally, horrible thoughts, no motivation, deeply depressed. Then, that's around the time she went to Women and Infants Hospital, right? Looking for help. Look at this. As she runs into January, there's nothing other than little chicken scratches because her mind was gone. In January, as she's on these drugs and she's suffering from what you've heard is postpartum depression that can lead to postpartum psychosis, and you have these men coming in here that don't even know psychosis from schizophrenia as experts, telling you that if a woman doesn't have these symptoms, like it's a disease, symptoms of postpartum depression within 4 weeks, that's it. Lights out. You're not a person that can be considered. You're not a real person for purposes of postpartum depression and or postpartum psychosis. Well, I suggest that he's wrong. I suggest the second guy's wrong and the third guy. Well, actually, I don't even know. It's your memory. If the gentleman, Mac, even knew, I think he said 4 weeks. It can go up to a year or longer. But we don't really know because you heard the evidence. There's no evidence. There's nothing in the DSM, but that's the Bible. God forbid you should go to Europe. You should look at the World Health Organization records. You should look at the way they treat pregnant women that have problems with their children. No, we're the most advanced country in the world. But we still have doctors that come into court on a murder trial and talk about 4-week cutoff on something that they don't even know exists. They've never treated it. They've never written about it. You have terrorism experts. You have an expert that comes in and talks about his focus and his interests, and it's about juveniles and drugs. And like I said, kids that like to drink and smoke weed. Those are the experts, quote unquote, to support their burden to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Lindsay was not suffering from a disease or defect at the time that she killed her children. You all remember this. October. This is not an evidence, it's marked for identification. It's too big. So, but basically it shows clearly and unequivocally the depths of despair that this young kid was in, trying to raise 3 kids, trying to be a wife, ready to go back to work. Did anyone say that she was just lazy or just didn't want to go back to work? Manipulation. They're arguing. She didn't want to go back to work. She didn't want to go back to work because she didn't want to leave her kids, especially Callan, because she loved her children. They were her life. Manipulation. And when you consider the journals, I don't know, you ever watched the movie there, The Shining, with Jack Nicholson. Remember the scene when he's sitting there in a state of complete psychosis, and he's writing a book and he's typing, and the wife finds the book and opens it up and looks at it and says, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Repeated after repeated after repeated. And he says, do you like it? You look at the records of her Googling drugs. You look at how many times, how many hours of the night in the afternoon she's looking this stuff up, in between taking care of the family, in between all of the stuff that was going on with visiting doctors, seeing doctors, going to Rhode Island, being told, no, we can't help you, calling a suicide hotline, we can't help you, calling another suicide hotline, we can't help you. My God, what does she have to do? She was reaching out for help, and she was not getting it. She turns herself in to McLean Hospital. You saw the doctor, nice one. She's testifying. She didn't know. I suggest to you that she didn't know hardly anything, let alone psychosis involving a young lady like her going through what she was going through. The government bears the burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. They bring, for example, Ian Whiffen. The guy, you might remember him, was the guy that's, I guess he developed or helped develop Celebrate. What you got when you look at the records, you don't measure on an Apple Watch. Well, I shouldn't say Apple Watch because we know that they didn't have the Apple Watch, but on a cell phone. You don't measure going down the stairs. You measure stair climbing, right? That's what the testimony was. And there were 3 stairs that were climbed. Okay. The last record is 5:38. At 5:38 p.m., we went through that on cross. What happens to the phone? Don't know. It was on the bed. Was it dropped on the bed and it left there for 20 minutes? She could have been anywhere in the house during all that period of time, right? Right? You've got a compressed period of time that Patrick leaves to go to the restaurant to pick up the CV, and you heard the guy yesterday say, and then she sent him off to go to CVS. It's on the way. It's on the way. She didn't want him out of the house long. She was in distress. She wanted him home to help with the bathing, to help with the kids, to help putting them to bed. How long is he going to be gone? She Googles it. Is that something that is so nefarious? You think that that goes right along line with the book about good mothers having bad thoughts. My God, she actually Googled the time frame that Patrick would take to go to 3B and pick up the food and stop at CVS on the way. So I guess the government is suggesting she's not in a psychosis. So she's Googling Miralax because the doctor earlier that day told her that the baby Cora needed Miralax. Why would she do that? Because remember the government's opening when they told you she wasn't suffering from the psychosis. She was a woman that didn't want to live her life anymore, wasn't happy being a mother, didn't want to live that life. So she's going to kill her kids and hopefully throw herself out the window and not paralyze herself, and then she could run off into the sunset, I guess. That's what their theory was. Along with the fact it wasn't a real good suicide, it was fake. Well, now we know, don't we? The mess that this young lady was in her brain, my brain is being damaged. I will never be better. That's the evidence. That's the evidence that we have in this case. Burden of proof is on them to prove to you that at the time that she killed these 3 beautiful kids, that she just wanted to move on with her life. And I suggest to you, just as there's no chicken nugget residue, and then when you look at those photographs, there's a slice of a cucumber, there's a slice of a carrot, there's no chicken nuggets in that bowl. Patrick wouldn't know what the kids were eating. She was the one that would cook their dinner. She was in the refrigerator, but the guy yesterday is like, oh no. Patrick said that the child was eating the chicken McNuggets in the bowl. No, she was getting food out for the 2 kids, not the little baby, 2 kids for dinner. There's no evidence that she's lying. There's no evidence that she's malingering. And finally, you remember there was a big deal about whether or not the voices are within the head or whether or not they're outside the head. Dr. Resnick's article with the largest research on voices and malingering in the world indicates that 38% of almost 1,000 people that were examined report voices from inside their head. And it stops. You're going to buy that guy yesterday? He doesn't know what he's talking about. This young lady is not guilty of the killing of her children because she was suffering from a disease and defect, as His Honor instructed you. And they're not going to be able to prove otherwise. And it's their burden, not ours. Thank you.